Imagine you are on the Titanic, just when it's about to sink. You are in danger, severe danger. Your life is being threatened. You're going to die. Someone doesn't act soon. You're going to die. In this situation, this life or death situation, there is a evacuation happening. Evacuations being taken place, and you're about to be rescued. However, you're being informed that you must wait because there's a pecking order. Children go first. This is to be expected. Children are young, innocent, naive, but you discover that there's another group of people that are giving preference over you. They're treated like a minority, in fact, when they're in fact the majority, oftentimes. And they're the same age as you are, typically. But they're given precedence over you automatically. What do you do in this situation? Do you complain? Because if you complain, you'll be seen as less of a man. Since the dawn of time, this has been happening. And for a long time, men have been quiet. For a long time, men have gone along with the narrative, because in many cases it was advantageous for men to do so. We lived in hunter-gatherer days. During those hunter-gatherer days, men oftentimes, had to do certain things, were forced to. Otherwise, the species wouldn't have survived if men didn't play their role in a very specific way. However, in modern times, we find men still playing these same roles that they don't always have to play. We see men being used and abused by a system that care less about them. In some ways, cares more about the other group. In some ways, no, it doesn't. It just really just cares about itself. Is able to exploit the other group in order to, get men to cave in, to their desires and to their agenda. This is how the world works in the 21st century. This other group that I'm talking about is women. Women, for a long time, ages, have had a certain power in society that people don't always acknowledge, people don't always mention, but is a power that they have been able to utilize, that has been used to enforce policy, that has been used sometimes for good, sometimes, though, for forces that are not so good. This power that women have is a power to make people care. The power to garner sympathy is a power that is far above and beyond greater with females than males. There's a biological reason for this. There's also a socialized reason for this. The reason is that the species wouldn't survive without women. In some ways, women are more important than men. Women, and for a long time, we haven't been honest about this. For a long time, we painted women as the oppressed group. In this country specifically, there is a tremendous issue. An issue that people, sometimes it's only far right, it's not even far right, but sometimes the middle right, men's rights activists are honest about. But not only are feminists not honest about this, but even the average person, to a degree, even though they know this, they are not always upfront about this. They know within themselves, but they don't always want to talk about it. It's seen as not very PC to talk about. But this thing I'm talking about, this great force in the world that is used as manipulation, that is used to manipulate the population of this country, this force is known as gynocentrism. And this particular force is not something that you'll see recognized immediately. You have to really observe it for some time. You have to really, really get to know people, get exposed to new ideas, be aware of gender politics, be aware of how women and men act. And over time, you'll start to notice certain things. start to notice how, on one hand, our traditional values, when it comes to how men and women are treated or should be, on the one hand, by certain, they're challenged in certain context, but in other context, we give in to the traditional values, and we take them without questioning them. And this is an issue because right now men are being oppressed. Yes, I said it, and it's okay to say it. Men in this country have been used. They've been scammed, not by women necessarily, but by the system that oftentimes favors women, especially when it comes to divorce courts, when it comes to child custody courts, when it comes to criminal activity. There's a whole swarm of areas in which women have had precedence, have had privilege over men. And partially because of the modern day feminism movement, of which I used to agree with on some things. I used to partake in feminist sort of rhetoric. I used to be a part of certain feminist online groups on Facebook and stuff like that. They have sort of manipulated the population, especially women in college campuses, have been manipulated by a lot of these statistics, by a lot of these, whether it's the rape statistics or it's the gender pay gap statistics, which has been debunked numerous times. But they've been led to think that they have been oppressed in this country. Now, you could say something different about women in the Middle East, but in this country, no. By and large, women have not been oppressed, by and large. By the government, see. The government has been using the system, to get what they want out of men, to get their money. And there are women that, some women out there that are going along with this narrative. Some are not. Some are very much aware of what's going on and fighting it. But it takes a really, really, really enlightened, sometimes smart person, sometimes a really just skeptical person to really figure all this stuff out. To really understand like what's going on with these issues of like sexism, misogyny, or misandry, to really get to the bottom of it. It's a difficult process and it makes some people uncomfortable, but someone has to do it, I think, because if we don't, things are just getting worse and worse and worse. Take Israel, for example. Israel's in a really bad situation right now. It's called the gender equality capital of the world, which is a complete joke. Israel right now is in shambles due to their lack of due process and their gynocentrism. Basically allow women to do whatever they want. Women can basically accuse a man of rape or abuse, domestic violence, anything they want, have them thrown in jail like that. The male cops will be on them in an instant. And that's the thing, that this whole problem isn't a simple problem of man versus woman or anything like that. No, it's about right versus wrong. It's not about, I'm not one of those crazy MGTOWs that wants, the return of the male authority. No, I want the right people in power, whether they have to be men or women, doesn't matter. Because there's plenty of men that have bought into this, have drunk the Kool-Aid, so to speak, which is a term that I've used. Some men who have drunk in the Kool-Aid and have bought into this hook, line, and sinker, and have become crazy sort of like radical feminists themselves and are preaching this kind of stuff. But Israel right now is in a really bad situation because in Israel, it's been documented, women can lie about anything they want, have a man thrown in jail, just like that. And there's not really much that man could do about it. In one case, there was a case where a woman was in a man's taxi, and this woman was harassing this guy, so this guy told her to get out. He kicked her out of his taxi. And so she, feeling vindictive, this evil energy within her made her say, okay, well, I'm just going to say that you're raping me, you're abusing me. And so she started screaming, acting like he was attacking her. And the only reason why he wasn't put in jail was because he had a camera in his taxi. The camera showed her lying, exposed her for being a fraud. And guess what? She didn't get no punishment. He happened to, thank goodness, avoid punishment only because of that tape. If that tape wasn't there, he could have been in prison, most likely. So these kind of issues are serious. These issues can be monumental in some cases. It's not as bad as it is in Israel, but over here we still have a lot of problems with due process, with sort of the sexism, a lot of expectations when it comes to women. Like, you know, and women, especially feminists, will complain constantly about sexism and misogyny and that kind of thing. That kind of thing is a problem, but it's a problem the way people don't realize. Sexism is like a seesaw. It has a seesaw effect. It can work to your advantage or your disadvantage depending on the context. You know, this is something I learned from anti-feminist men's rights activist. Her name is Karen Strong. You know, she's an amazing woman, but she opened my eyes to so much that's happening right now. I agree with her most of everything when it comes to gender. And yeah, she laid it out very beautifully in her interview on the Red Pill documentary. Where she was talking about how sexism works, and basically how it works is that in some situations, women are viewed in a sexist way in terms of being less than men, less capable than men, which is a problem. But what they don't see is that because we see them as less or less capable, we're willing to give them more. So essentially, what I'm saying is, yes, there's a problem here, but the problem isn't all men's fault. Neither is it all women's fault, as some crazy MGTOWs would have you believe either. No. The situation is much more complicated. It's not about gender. Again, it is about gender, but even the discussion about gender itself is about right and wrong. It's about principles. It's not about who's more oppressed. It's about what your principles are, what you're willing to fight for and stand up for. Me personally, how I feel about this is very simple. Very simple.
Kill the bitches.
Just keep true to your principles. Don't be afraid of what any group or ideology tells you to think, or what they tell you to believe. Always be skeptical of whatever they say. Always second guess them, because there's nuggets of truth in what they're saying, but there's a whole bunch of manipulation, of lies, of just distorting the facts for an agenda.